got me into games was probably just trying to find applications for the computer that my parents had, and trying to bring the ideas that I had to life in some shape or form, and I think most importantly show them to others. I think my earliest games were made using magnet sets as a kid, like sets of like little magnet mazes and little science experiments and things like that. And I remember making like little games and giving them to my parents to play.
Okay.
And then that sort of graduated to trying to write. I guess maybe sort of graduated to level editors. Lemmings in DOS was a big one for me. I love making levels for Lemmings in DOS. Because it was like one of the first games that came with a level editor.
Okay.
And so you could sort of customize your maps however you want. And I remember building loads of those for my brothers. I was one kid out of four, so I kind of had my own playtesting group, which was super fun.
Okay.
Then I think this was even before I knew game design was a profession you could pursue full time. Eventually sort of I became acutely aware that there was I had lots of ideas for games, but I didn't necessarily have the tools at my disposal until I found out about the possibilities in computer programming and what you could create. So I think I started out making small applications in Visual Basic, and then sort of moved on to sort of very early versions of game making tools like RPG Maker and Game Maker, and the very early days sort of tools. The first game I made was Quidditch. I was really big into Harry Potter sort of before it was cool. And I'd read like the first couple of books. There was a game called Quidditch in it. There was no game for Quidditch on my computer or anywhere, or no board game. So I decided to try and bring that thing into reality. I made sort of a two-dimensional version of Quidditch, and it was sort of a passion project for an entire summer, trying to read the Harry Potter books as like my game design document and translate the behaviors into code. And that's where I sort of learned that game design, sort of got to grips with how game design really functioned in practice, with sort of words written on paper being translated into logic, and then potentially becoming a fun game. I also learned, I guess, what bad game design looks like. In the case of Quidditch, it was a very valuable lesson to me, because I discovered sort of, J.K. Rowling is not a very good game designer. Quidditch is a pretty imbalanced game, and when you try and play it in practice, it doesn't play out at all like it is in the book. It plays out as such. Like, the minimal viable strategy of the game was to simply go find the golden snitch and win all the points, and you win the game sort of 99% of the time. So it kind of made sense as I was playing, my little Quidditch 2D Quidditch prototype with my brothers. It became quickly apparent that it makes more sense to get all of those players to pursue the snitch and forget about the rest of the game. So, and that sort of made me aware of like, hey, that was sort of the beginnings of design thinking, I guess, sort of. And then I started thinking about, how do you improve this game? What does a more balanced game look like? And sort of began to fix it and sort of come up with my own thing. And I think that just led to a lifelong passion, just that you could even distill it down to just that one sort of project, a lifelong sort of passion and pursuit of wanting to become a professional game designer from like a really young age, like early teens. So it, to the extent that even in high school and through college, I would only be focused on improving my mathematics, improving my programming, and improving my artistic ability to sort of render ideas and bring them to life. And what followed was, perhaps since early teens till now, sort of a 2-decade journey of just trying to get better and better in those 3 functions. Yeah. So after sort of graduating from Brunel University London, which has, one of the UK's, I was really excited to get into that as a student because it's one of the UK's top courses in games. After graduating that, I started working, I got my first sort of, I guess, professional design job at a company called State of Play Games.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But even before the point I graduated, I was still sort of building and shipping games on Xbox Live and Xbox Live Arcade, just as a student. So you could say by the time I'd actually started work as a professional sort of game designer, I'd already shipped a bunch of stuff to the Xbox marketplace, which had actually sold some copies, which got me excited.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually finished games, and I would always encourage students, ship as much as you can before you graduate, and get people to play. And money doesn't really matter while you're a student, at least when it comes to, it's more important to get your games into the hands of as many people as possible and get feedback. So you can sort of launch your first 10 games before you actually do it professionally, and and that way you increase your chances of success, I guess. Yeah. So I work for, just going back, I worked for this company called State of Play Games, which ended up being like a BAFTA award-winning studio for games like Loom and Lumino City. And it was a great experience working with them. It was just a husband and wife team, and I was like their only employee. Yeah, it's a very well-known sort of indie studio, but I got to see the inner workings of how multi-talented that team was, and how they sort of by hook or crook made their visions come to life. And I find that really inspiring. And nonetheless, it was pretty much working for pretty much nothing in London, having to commute sort of hours a day just to try and get your foot into the door, sort of job. At that point in my life, lots of things were happening around social gaming as a new genre. And sort of Facebook was becoming popular, and Facebook games were really exploding. And Zynga was the hottest company in Silicon Valley. And and I was surprised one day to receive a call from them. I think they were trying to rapidly expand, and I think all the establishment game designers, I think, kind of turned their noses up at the new idea of social games. But me as a new entrant to the market, I was willing to try anything, and my main ambition was to get my games into the hands of as many people as possible. So whether they were people like myself who enjoyed hardcore games or casual gamers, I didn't really care. So for me, Zynga was a very aspirational company to join. It was, from a designer's hat, putting on my designer's hat at that time, they were at the cutting edge of game design. They were exploring a new market, and loads of new people were playing games for the first time through sort of Facebook.
Yeah. Right.
So I thought, and also their approach was controversial and innovative, sort of data-driven design versus the more artistic design that I think the industry had grown accustomed to. So then, so I was super keen, but the job was, I went through all these rounds of interviews, but then the job was eventually offered to me. But the catch was, the job is in Bangalore, India.
Oh, okay.
Where at the time, I think the rationale there was, Zynga was just set up in India, and they didn't really have, or they weren't really aware, or had trouble finding game designers in Bangalore back in like 2011. So I guess they had just started, trying to source their designers, or these specialty roles from places all over the world, including random students who were cycling to work in London. So
Okay.
but I was young and foolish, and I said yes. I moved to India at that time, thinking it would just be sort of a 1-year thing. And I would have a lot of fun in India, and go back home and tell everybody what a wonderful trip I had. But yeah, I ended up staying with Zynga for around 3 years. And it was like a roller coaster journey. I think because there were so few designers working at Zynga India, like as a young guy, I just got like a bunch of responsibility really fast. You have to understand that what it's like to be sort of in your early 20s, like 22, 23, and then be given a game that's making $8 million and saying, okay, this is your game now. Like it's like, oh geez.
Yeah.
Sorry
to cut you, but like, was this because I can recall this was around 2011, right? When you joined Zynga, and this was the same time when Cityville, Farmville, and games were like, those games were getting very popular.
It was pre-mobile.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was when Facebook was, Zynga was a Facebook game developer.
Right. And which title were you working on?
I was working on Empires and Allies, Yeovil, Bubble Safari. These kind of games. And yeah, it really was a roller coaster ride. They would like fly me out to the US for months at a time to sort of transition games to India. So got to learn from like a lot of experienced designers in the US about how they worked, and also PMs and every function really. It was like doing an MBA course, really. Like but like on fast forward. And yeah, from there, like over sort of a few years, sort of learned the ropes, and then sort of figured out after a while that there's no reason why in India you couldn't just build an independent company that did the same things Zynga did.
Okay, so that's when Moonfrog came.
Yeah.
Okay. But before we jump into your first venture as a co-founder, I have like 2 questions. One, around like, how did you land up a job in Zynga? Like, did you apply? Did they reach out to you? Like, how was it?
They reached out. Yeah.
Like, what platform? Like was LinkedIn very prevalent at that time, or what were you using?
It wasn't LinkedIn. It was I think it was a referral from a college friend, something like that.
Okay, correct. Yeah. So, okay, and then the offer was for India. So you finally ended up deciding that you want to come to India and join in India. Got it. And then there was this one post that I read on LinkedIn where you mentioned that you were delivering newspapers back when you were 13 years old.
Yeah. So, that's pre my game design career. In fact, you say my first career was delivering papers around to my hometown, I guess.
So was like also at this time where you already had in your mind that you'll be ending up in gaming, or were you still figuring out? Because you mentioned that in early teens itself you started playing around with building games and maybe shipping your first projects.
Yeah, my passion for games began way before sort of my paper round career.
Okay.
But as a teenager, it's pretty common in the UK to take odd jobs to try and get some pocket money. And you can't really afford games as a teenager, especially if your parents, but I think my parents are of the belief that I have to earn the money, So in order to buy the games I loved, of course, it meant I had to deliver hundreds of newspapers in a day and fund my gaming passion. I remember I would buy components of my computer piece by piece from my paper round money,
Wow, that was real grind. That was the hustling days.
Grind. It was month on month, I'd buy one stick of RAM.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'd pore over what is exactly the right RAM I need for this MOBO, and my build would take a year to finish. But so I did these odd. I mean, I even pumped gas for a while at a gas station.
Oh.
That was
Wow.
I guess my first two jobs was first I delivered papers, then I worked at a gas station. And just to fund sort of my passion in gaming, I guess, and also my passion in art, because art materials aren't cheap. So I'd be pooling together my money to get a new set of pencils, or a new set of colors. And I remember sitting at the back of the gas station, drawing and doing all these things while my manager got pissed off. Why are you mopping the floor?
Oh man, things that your passion makes you to do. Starting from gas stations to delivering newspapers. This is going to be an interesting story with good headline. How a newspaper delivery guy built $1 million startup.
Pretty much.
Okay, so now jump into Moonfrog.
Gas. Yeah, Moonfrog. So Moonfrog again was another roller coaster. I mean, so a few of us at Zynga got together and we were like, look, we're at the right place at the right time. Mobile gaming was still very much on the cusp of going big. So we thought, okay, let's start the India version of Zynga. That was the dream. So let's do Zynga for India. And and it's a success story today, having exited for 100 mil. But when we started, it was literally 10 lakhs each, and then that's it. And there were times where we were nearly out of money, and we were like, okay, well, if we don't raise money, we're dead. Yeah. Thankfully, it was a time we were lucky. I say we were very fortunate. We kind of walked into Sequoia's office with a PPT of that was. It's embarrassing looking back at it, what that PPT looked like. It was just screenshots from websites and things.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was just saying the whole message was mobile gaming will be big, and we are going to make mobile games. That was the whole pitch. And back in 2014, 2015, that's all you needed to do. I think we were the only team with that sort of Zynga kind of experience that could potentially pull it off in India at that time. So we pretty much walked into Sequoia's office with this really bad PPT and walked out with $1 million.
Wow.
Yeah, and from that point onwards, we didn't even have a game. Nothing was launched. It was just 4 people. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, and yeah, one of whom I still work with today, Dimple, our art director. So, yeah, and so that was. I mean, I'm not sure how relatable that is to anyone, but it was a surreal experience having, in the span of sort of 4 years, working for pretty much nothing and cycling to work every day in freezing cold sort of weather in London, and having kids chasing me on my bicycle. to raising $1 million from Sequoia and living in India. But that's how it was. So just kind of rolled with it. And yeah, like we tried a few games at Moonfrog that didn't work, that nobody knows about. So we tried a bingo game that failed. And then we decided, I think after the failed bingo game, it took us about a year of our time and it just failed. And we remember looking at the cash we had remaining in the bank account and it was dwindling, you know, it was going down. We figured, okay, we only have a few more months of money left from this $1 million. Let's try and do a Hail Mary. And we decided to just like copy a Team Patty game that was already out. Yeah. And thankfully we, again, right place, right time. And it, you know, that Team Patty game went sky high in terms of organic downloads for us. I've never seen like a launch that successful, like where you launch it and it just overnight it's getting 10, 20,000 downloads per day, like with zero marketing. Yeah. So you could say we didn't even do it like because we thought it like somebody just told us we should try it and we just did. And it took us like 2 weeks to make the game.
So how big a team was at that time, like when you built this team of the game?
It was like 10, 12 people. Yeah.
Oh, and all devs and designers?
Yeah. And like Team Patty was actually built by myself, Dimple, and I think like 1 or 2 engineers. So it's like a team of 4 built like Team Patty. And then, you know, Team Patty today is like around $10-15 million game. And it's still like a big portion of Moonfrog's revenue. In fact, maybe half or more of Moonfrog's revenue. So yeah, like that sort of catapulted us into like a Series A company. So like from we raised 1 million, then we went back to our investors and said, look at all this growth we're getting. Can we have more money, please?
With a better PPT this time?
With a better PPT, I remember I worked on all the artwork and like making everything look nice. And like it's like we're pros now.
With better numbers.
Better numbers, actual traction and all that stuff. And thankfully at that time, it was the time of like Tiger Global's spending spree in India. And we kind of, Sequoia referred us to Tiger Global, who, you know, over the course of like a 15-minute, Tiger Global is just known for being trigger happy with their investment. And they were investing heavily on the India thesis. So really after like 15, 20 minutes of listening to our pitch, it was like, yeah, this matches with our thesis, here's $50 million.
Holy shit. And I've heard this from many founders that, you know, the people who actually end up paying you money, they won't take a lot of time of yours. Like the call ends up usually in like 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. Yeah. Okay.
Pretty much, yeah. And so that's how, and that was like the biggest fundraise that India had seen until that point in gaming. Yeah. So it was very surprising that, you know, again, like this is in the span of maybe 5 or 6 years. It's going from being a, you know, broke-ass student to running one of India's most heavily funded gaming startups. And then sort of growing our team size to over 100 people, having a big office. You know, it was like super, super fast growth. But then I think like a lot of stress comes along with that. And I think especially for me, it was like not really agreeing on the vision of the company with my co-founders, because like my view was like, we should build the best games possible in India. And, you know, my opinion was that we shouldn't necessarily just be building for India, we should be building for the world. Because that's where, you know, that's how you make it big, you know?
Right. Yep.
Unfortunately, you know, I think about 4 co-founders, it was very difficult to build consensus on that. So after the Series A with Tiger Global, I decided to leave. Okay. Yeah, what I thought was the peak of Moonfrog. Yeah.
Okay. And right. Plus, so you started Bombay Play immediately after Moonfrog, or you took a break?
Yeah, I had to on my way out. Of course, my co-founders, as friendly as they were, made me sign a non-compete agreement. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So I had to spend 1 year where I worked in Hyderabad at Glue Mobile doing live ops.
Oh, yeah. I can see that on your LinkedIn profile.
Yeah. So yeah, like that was fine. So I sort of, you could say I was just that was my retirement, I guess. But also, like, that's not the only thing I did for a year. I also spent like a few months sort of exploring India, you could say.
Okay.
Doing all the stuff that I really wanted to do, like going, kayaking down the Ganga, doing lots of trekking, just seeing all the wilderness, seeing all the stuff that India had to offer. So that was like one of the. I'm glad I took the time to do that as well, because until that point it was all just work, work, work in Bangalore.
So actually doing what you had initially thought you were coming for.
Yeah. It was like that. I thought coming to India would just be some cool cultural experience.
People doing yoga.
Yeah, people doing yoga. Taking weird medicine.
Okay.
Yeah, but and then after that period was over at Glue, I got in touch with my current co-founder Abbas, who was also like one of the first employees at Moonfrog. Okay. And thought, let's do it properly this time. Let's build in India for the world. And that's where, I think we started in 2019-ish.
Yep.
Raised our seed round in 2020, maybe late 2019. I'm not even sure when we raised our seed. It was like around late 2019, early 2020, something like that. And then we raised our Series A last year. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But probably this time it would have been like, was it easier for you to raise money for Bombay Play because you had a lot of experience this time? You had connections in the industry?
I wouldn't say it was easier. We had to actually prove that we had something that worked. Because investors still think of, well, first of all, like mobile gaming the wave of mobile gaming had already sort of risen, and that wasn't really a cool new story anymore. Like cryptocurrency was the cool new story, but we wanted to stay true to ourselves. I mean, real money gambling was a cool new story. So you can say like the investment community kind of moved on from gaming. Into these new markets, and we were still trying to raise for a gaming company. So, it's certainly a lot of being starting a company is like telling investors what they want to hear sometimes. But we would just instead of doing that, we told investors what we think would work, and then inevitably we just showed like what we thought worked was working, and then we were able to raise money. Yeah. So yeah, you can say we bootstrapped our way to our first $1 million with just like a team of 3 people: myself, my co-founder Abbas, and another engineer called Prasanna. And there were just 3 of us, and we were just in a co-working space, which was in a basement in Bangalore. It was like the cheapest office space in Bangalore, and we just worked there for like 1 year. Just the 3 of us, and we managed to just like launch a game. That game ended up making, and still does make, like around $1 million a year.
Wow.
Yeah.
What game was this?
Card Party.
Sorry, come again.
A game called Card Party.
Okay, got it. Okay. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. So it was at that point I felt vindicated. Like, I felt like, I've really proven that it's not just luck. You can actually, there is some skill involved here. And not just anyone can go into the basement and come out with $1 million game.
Right. True that.
And so, and that gave investors a lot more confidence as well. Like, he's a second-time founder. He's done it again. And, and then that's when Leo Capital, Lumikai, and the co-founder of Zynga even sort of, his name's Justin Waldron, came in. Yeah.
Okay.
Actually came in and did our seed round, which was around 1.5 million. Yeah.
Interesting. I was reading about Justin, and there's this fun fact about Justin. He hacked Burger King's coupon code system back when he was in high school before starting Zynga, and put that up on website, offered free sandwiches to literally everyone.
Yeah, he was like a hacker kind of guy. But yeah, Justin Waldron and Lumikai and Leo Capital, so they all came together for our seed round.
Wow.
And like from our seed round, then COVID happened.
And you were in India. Were you stuck in India for COVID?
Yeah, I was here throughout. Yeah.
Okay. Never felt like going back to home for a while.
Oh, there was this temptation, like I can run away from all these problems and go and live more comfortably somewhere else. But I decided to sort of stick through it with my team, and be like, I'll experience what they're experiencing. And we're in this together sort of thing.
Right. Because there was an easier way out, because coming from a developing country to developed country is one thing, and then other way around is completely opposite, right? It's totally different, because like staying in Bangalore traffic, like sometimes it got to be fuck with your head that fuck it, I'm gonna go back, I'm done with this shit.
It's like you get into this negative mindset sometimes, like if I was back in my home country, I wouldn't have these problems. And I think I've actually seen like the same psychology happen to people who actually are Indian nationals and have lived here all their lives. Somehow, like people get the idea, like if I leave India, all my problems will be solved. But it's not true. You just end up with a new set of problems.
Right.
So I would always say, like, India, Bangalore, it's the land of opportunity, and it's got way more opportunity for somebody ambitious in Bangalore than it is to, go to Wales and live with the sheep.
Got it. Interesting. So long way, man. Like 2 decades? No, a decade only in the industry.
A decade in India, yeah, like from 2011 onwards. So over a decade. And then sort of before then is sort of a very focused sort of education on games.
Yeah. And interesting.
And a lot of grind.
Yeah, a lot of grind, building 2 companies from scratch. And interesting. This was a awesome journey. Like it's definitely inspiring. And the part where you mentioned that it all started by cycling your way to your work and to meeting Justin, and like being in that circle, like getting introduced to folks like those in the industry who are these are the legendary people in the industry who've built things from scratch, who have shaped up the gaming industry as well. But
but also, like, I think it's also been a journey of sort of reaching the top and then sort of leaving it all behind and building it all back up again. Yeah. So, it certainly has been a roller coaster in every aspect, I guess.
Also, you got married recently, right? Congrats on that.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I mean, my wife is also a co-founder of a company, so it's like going through sort of, it's like running 2 startups at once now.
Right. So she's building another startup, but it's not in gaming, is it?
Not in gaming, it's in fintech.
Got it. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool, Oliver. I would not take more time of yours. Thank you so much for this.